I just need to make a very quick video about antinatalism, unfortunately. So if it's a topic that you're tired of or that's not of interest to you, look away now. But it's really to do with my own, and this is probably just me, my own disquiet or my own frustration with YouTube antinatalism again. I've said in a previous video that I would like to be able to say I'm an antinatalist. In fact, I said it on almost exactly this spot in this field. But I couldn't because it was such a shot to pieces idea on YouTube, and I still feel that. But I don't think I conveyed exactly what my problem was, apart from the ones that I specified. And it's not so much that I think the world is a nice place, and I think lots of babies should be born into it to experience how nice a place is, or that antinatalists are deluded, or any of those kinds of things, actually. You know, I'm a fairly optimistic guy, and I'm a fairly happy guy as a rule, but not always, like any of us are, you know. And I'm not blind to the difficulties of life. And quite a lot of the videos that I've made on YouTube have been, broadly speaking, pessimistic in nature. Not hundreds, but dozens for sure. Pessimistic in nature. Trying to come to terms on a personal level and a philosophical level with what I see as the difficulties of being alive and awake in a world such as ours. And it's a complex history. It isn't simple and isn't obvious, and whenever I hear words like simple and obvious being applied to this life, it's my heart sinks a bit, because it isn't. You know, I've talked about these things. I've talked about the history of it, I've talked about the philosophical history of it, I've talked about the political implications of it, I talked about it from a personal perspective. One of my very earliest conversations with Mendham on here, actually, probably 2.5 years ago, maybe more, was to do with, it was called something like Original Sin. And I was kicking around ideas with Mendham at that time about this relation, what this original sin might mean. It's a biblical concept, Christian concept. Of course, nobody takes any notice of that, do they? Original idea that the sins of our fathers, originally the sins of Adam and Eve, have so offended the Lord that future generations, all of the sons will be cursed because of those sins of the father. And of course that's a silly idea, isn't it? But I like that idea as resonant for some aspects of being alive and awake. The sins of our biological history, if you like, is part of why we're here, isn't it? You know, I'm here because my ancestors were the most successful predators. They were the most successful rapists and gang leaders and villains. Oh yeah, also of course cooperators and all those kind of things. True. But you know, we have a little bit of a dark history. At other times, I've compared modern life to the beautiful sounds of the drums that were made out of the human skin that was peeled off the Jews in various concentration camps. If that story is true, but assuming it is true, it's. No matter how beautiful the music, you have to think about the materials in which it's being made. And that's something that's haunted me a lot. And not just me, you know, it's not a personal thing. This isn't just something that I've invented, or that Mendham's invented, or anybody on YouTube invented. These are things that's got a long and very, very rich, sombre, dark history. The ancient Greeks talked about it, the ancient Romans talked about it, the Babylonians talked about it, the Egyptians talked about it. Every culture has faced the kind of existential dread of the world, and recognise that it is, at least in part, red in tooth and claw, at least in part completely purposeless, at least in part completely meaningless, and has found, if not ways to deal with that, at least ways to not go insane from that possibility. And that not going insane has a kind of tradition, and it has a set of responses. And of course things have come about as a result of that. Whole schools of philosophy have come about as a result of that. Whole political movements have come about as a result of those realizations. Causes and cults and religions themselves, death cults have arisen as a part of that. All kinds of things have arisen as responses to that. And that's a really, really, really rich history, which in some ways sustains me personally when I'm feeling pessimistic. And even the recent history, I'm personally very fond of mid-20th century absurdists, the existential writers of the mid-20th century. You know, Samuel Beckett's plays, I think, capture really, really well a large part of the human condition. Tramps waiting for the side of the road for a tomorrow that never comes, a God that never shows up. a woman buried up to her neck, up to her waist in sand, just kind of having a happy day. People in waste bins playing some pointless end game, you know. I love all that, and I love it. Not because it distracts me, and not because it deludes me into thinking the world is a better place, but because it speaks to my soul, if I can use that word. I don't mean in any kind of religious way, of course, but it speaks to the kind of inchoate understanding that I walk around this world with. So I recognise all that, and know that history of difficult pessimistic thought. So when I come across YouTube antinatalism, for the most part, not all cases, and how trite and trivial a lot of it is, and how badly put together it is, and how self-congratulatory it is, and how stupidly propagandist it is, as if it's the first time these ideas have ever been thought of, as if it hasn't been absolutely built into the fabric of the human condition since day one. You know, since the first people came alive and awake. It isn't that we've just realised that things are difficult. We've always realised things are difficult. And the history of philosophy, the history of art, is at least partly to do with that. Damien Hirst's Crystal Skull, for the love of God, have a look at that. That's absolutely got human vanity built into it. The impossibility of death in the mind of someone living, a shark in formaldehyde. So when I see these trite versions of it, when I see the human condition summed up in a syllogism, you know, suffering is bad, living things suffer, therefore stop having living things. As if that, you know, as if 5,000 years of human civilization, thousands of years of human thought, millions of human words written on parchment and vellum and paper and on computer screens, as if that hasn't said something slightly more intelligent than a 3-line gag you could have got at a Christmas cracker. Christmas crackers for bad philosophers. You know, it's yeah. So that's why I'm disappointed and infuriated and pissed off with YouTube antinatalism. Not because it contradicts my deeply held thoughts and because I want the world to be a happy place. Because I want pessimism done right. I want the darker philosophies done correctly. I want history given its due. I want all the thought and the art and the expression that people have put into this taken into account. I don't want my pessimism trivialised. I want it to be, you know, robed in purple curtains and put on a fucking sepulchre. That's where it belongs, the one that history's built for it, and not reduced to a paper hat philosophy, which is pathetic. It's pathetic. It's letting the side down. Yeah, enough.